Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. In the final season of The Bad Batch, we confirmed something that has long been speculated on about the scientist Nala Se. She is trying to protect Omega from the Empire. There's something crucial in the clone's DNA that is crucial for Emperor Palpatine's Project Necromancer, a program that is most likely responsible for creating cloned versions of Palpatine with a heightened midichlorian count, so that if one day, he gets thrown down a ventilation shaft, he can just kind of force explode and send his spirit into another body. We're not exactly sure what is hidden in Omega's DNA and why it's so special, but we can be sure that Nala Se is actively trying to prevent this information from falling into anyone's hands. For days, Dr. Emery Carr has been taking blood samples from Omega for Nala Se to process and study, and the Kaminoan has just been secretly destroying the blood samples instead of taking a look at them. Because she knows she created Omega. But then one day when the Emperor arrives to Mount Tantus, Nala Se is removed from her usual station and Dr. Carr takes over her usual job.
If Emery tests your sample, you will be in danger. You must flee this facility before it is too late.
Now this statement right here is kind of shocking to me. You have to realize my understanding of the Kaminoans comes from the Republic Commando series by Karen Travis. And that novel series really does a deep dive on the cloning program, how it started, and how several different batches of clones were created before they got to the right one. And the chief medical scientist on Kamino at the time was an individual known as Kosai. And she was a complete, total monster. I mean, when the first batch of clones, known as the Null class, were born, they were deemed to be too disobedient and aggressive for military service, and so Kosai actually wants to just exterminate them. These are like 4 to 5 year old kids, or at least they look 4 to 5 years old. They're actually closer to 2 years old in age. It's only because of the Mandalorian trainer Cal Skirata that the Knolls would actually survive. And the hatred towards Kosai from the Knolls and other Mandalorians makes sense. Kosai was terrifying, and Mandalorians, while they might be brutish warriors who are great at killing things, they have a real soft spot for children. And the Kaminoans' complete lack of compassion for these clone children, well, that really rubbed Cal Skirata the wrong way. Before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, BetterHelp. Getting therapy can be intimidating. Where do you start? Where do you look for a therapist? Is it going to be expensive? Will they accept my insurance? Maybe I don't have insurance. What's next? Well, BetterHelp is here to make the entire process of going to therapy 100 times easier. They have 30,000 therapists in their network with a wide range of expertise. Just get started with them by filling out a questionnaire online about what challenges you're going through and what kind of therapy you're looking for. In most cases, you'll be matched with a therapist from BetterHelp within 48 hours. And then you can schedule your therapy session anytime it's convenient for you. The best part is because all BetterHelp therapy sessions happen over the phone, video chat, or through messaging, you won't have to waste time traveling to get to your therapy session. You can have it in the comfort of your own home or even during a break at work. If you don't like the therapist you've been assigned to, you can just switch with a click of a button. Join the over 4 million people who have used BetterHelp for their therapy needs and get 10% off of your first month of BetterHelp by checking out the description down below and clicking on our link. I guess that whole series and the viewpoint of the Mando Commandos have kind of shaped my view of the Kaminoans and allowed me to see them as the degenerate and evil dolphinkin that they are. The Kaminoans had a really rough past. You can't really blame them too much. For instance, did you know that Kamino used to be a much drier world, but a large flood basically destroyed the Kaminoans' entire civilization, which almost made their entire species extinct. It was only through great discipline, great sacrifice, selective breeding, cloning, and genetic engineering that the Kaminoans were able to evolve and then survive. The calculating moves they made to survive is what made them so cold and cruel when dealing with other life forms, especially the clones that they created in their labs. They also had an annoying superiority complex and saw most species as inconsequential compared to them. Also, their minimalist Apple Store-like aesthetics also points to the potential that the entire species might harbor sociopathic tendencies. But of course, I do have to stop judging the Kaminoans' culture through my own culture's lens. It's just not very helpful at all. It's fun though. Now seriously, if I continue just judging Nala Se as a monster because of all she's done, we'll get to that later, then I think I'll never figure out why Nala Se is protecting Omega. Now, of course, understanding a culture is kind of different from respecting a culture. I haven't gone that far yet. Like, if we run into a hive mind alien insect species, well shit, then I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all. So just because the Kaminoans don't adhere to a normal moral code that most species adhere to, doesn't mean that they're just monsters running around shanking people like the Sith. There's a lot of things to like about Kaminoan culture. Kaminoans tend to be very competent and relatively humble. There's a great deal of discipline also. Limited resources, limited space means obedience amongst the general population is completely necessary. The Kaminoans are basically like an island nation, like Japan or England. They suffer from the same restrictions and problems. They probably like queuing in lines and stuff. The Kaminoans are also very harsh and realistic when it comes to valuing life. And so there aren't really concerns with the ethics of their cloning program or the consequences their clones will suffer being deployed on large battlefields. What the Kaminoans really did care about were scientific breakthroughs and honors and fulfilling contracts. Now, Nala Se was a savant. Just like Kosai, she could figure out and create things that no one else really could. And she also happened to be one of the only individuals on Kamino to be aware of the inhibitor chips inside of each clone's brain. Nala Se would be instrumental in covering up the malfunction of Tup's inhibitor chip. She obviously was getting direction from Darth Tyrannus, who was getting direction from Darth Sidious. But what is her own personal opinion on this situation? Well, she's definitely very cold towards Tup, and upon seeing him, she quickly assesses they need to do the most harmful procedures first, including a hyper test, which causes Tup to have a seizure. Nala Se seems very unconcerned with the survival of Tup. She treats him like he's a product, and her harsh treatment of the clone most likely led to his death. Now, Nala Se would continue to try and create obstacles for the Clone Trooper 5s, who was attempting to get to the bottom of this inhibitor chip story. Nala Se ends up drugging him before he goes to Coruscant to talk to Palpatine, and that really puts him in like a difficult situation. Now, originally when I saw how mean Nala Se was to the clones, I just thought to myself, oh, here we go again, another Kaminoan who just doesn't give a crap about anything. And as a Chinese person, I definitely understand how like generational trauma, like those great floods, could really make your culture toxic. I just imagine that the Kaminoans' own suffering created this culture that was just so focused on results and not on the life of the individuals you're creating. And it's really not surprising to see a toxic culture. This is a large galaxy, and some of the aliens you run into are going to need to be base Delta Zero'd. Now, on the other hand, I also think that Nala Se actually believed in the purpose of these inhibitor chips. Remember, she's the one who installed them in the first place, but not even she understood that these chips were for killing the Jedi in some 1,000-year feud between the Sith and the Jedi. She thought that the chips were actually designed to protect everyone else from rogue Jedi, which is a legitimate concern. Nala Se had a professional working relationship with the Jedi, but as a pragmatic and science-based individual, she probably doesn't completely feel comfortable around what are basically space witches and wizards. She probably understands why inhibitor chips need to be kept a secret from the Jedi, and so she plays her part here perfectly. And although she is cruel, although she does indirectly cause the death of a few clones, if her ultimate goal is to keep the inhibitor chip a secret to protect the Republic from potential rogue Jedi, well, she's done her job correctly here. Furthermore, do you guys remember the first time we see Nala Se in the Clone Wars? She's actually in one of the first arcs in the Clone Wars TV show, the Malevolence arc. That's that gigantic ship that Grievous used that had the massive ion cannon that could take out entire fleets with one shot. Using the Malevolence, Grievous would create fear amongst the entire Republic fleet. Well, in that arc, Nala Se is working in the Kalita Shoals Medical Center, and General Grievous wants to attack it with a Malevolence.
Even if we had the transport, it is not possible to evacuate all of our wounded in time.
You must try. You won't stand a chance against that battleship.
Does it almost sound like Nala Se cares for the life of these injured clones? Could I go as far to say that she is implying that she will not abandon the most seriously wounded clones and will go down with her ship, station, kind of thing? That kind of puts Nala Se in a different light for me. As a matter of fact, for the rest of the war, Nala Se would volunteer or at least work in several different medical stations healing clones. I mean, surely that's a sign that she really does care about them, right? I mean, it's a very nurturing role. You have to be a special type of person to do this type of job. Now, again, it's possible that she's not helping these clones out of the kindness of her heart like a human would. Maybe she's just following orders and fulfilling contracts. Maybe she's a company gal before anything else. Now, there is another motivation that could be driving Nala Se. You see, Kaminoans, even ones as brilliant as her, love their planet and their city. Now, a lot of people have said that the Kaminoans are xenophobic or isolationist. I've even called them that from time to time. But what really is going on is that the Kaminoans just aren't interested by the outside. You know, when the Great Flood was occurring on Kamino, it's not like they didn't have access to the rest of the galaxy. They could have asked for help. They could have asked for relief from the judicial forces or the Jedi or the Republic. But the Kaminoans are worried that maybe outsiders might colonize them or change their culture, or they might just lose all their resources. Mind you, these were people whose entire planet has just been flooded over, and they're thinking about this. The Kaminoans made a calculation and would end up betting on themselves. They believed that they knew best about how to preserve their species. They would create new cities above the water, enclosed from rain and wind. They saved as much flora and fauna as possible, and they also altered their own DNA to survive longer. The Kaminoans are isolationists not because of fear or hatred of outsiders. They simply just don't find the outside interesting or as inspiring as their own species, their own planet, and their triumph over the environment. And so when Nala Se protects the inhibitor chip and protects the clones in the medical facility, she's doing her job and making her nation proud. But then something happens in the last season of The Bad Batch. Tipica City, Nala Se's hometown, is completely destroyed. Her labs are destroyed, her people are seized and carted off to some unknown location. Thousands of years of hard work and dedication wiped out in just a few days by some brutish Imperial and his Imperial-class Star Destroyer. This would have created a massive amount of anger inside of Nala Se, which on the surface, of course, would not appear to be anything. But yeah, she hated the Empire. And so this idea of Nala Se helping Darth Sidious, the man who ordered the destruction of her home, is probably highly offensive to her, and this is why she wants to keep Omega out of the hands of the Empire. But there is an interesting hiccup. Do you guys remember in the first season when Omega disappears? Well, Prime Minister Lama Su hires several bounty hunters to try and capture Omega. You see, by the last year of the Clone Wars, the Fett DNA was already beginning to degrade. What the Kaminoans really needed to ensure future clones could be created was two original unaltered clones, either Boba Fett or Omega. Lama Su was a business-oriented type of guy, and he had this cute idea that he could continue to produce clones for the Empire, maybe even unleash some new lines of clones with Nala Se's advanced research. And so Nala Se's reaction to Lama Su hiring bounty hunters is to secretly hire her own bounty hunter, Fennec Shand, who interferes with Cad Bane's attempt to capture Omega, keeping her safely out of Imperial hands. I mean, this seems to indicate that there's something really special about Omega, and that, you know, Nala Se doesn't trust anyone, not even her own Prime Minister. Now, obviously, the arrival of the Empire also puts her on high alert, but clearly she is smart enough to know that whatever she's done with Omega's DNA will put her in danger with the Empire. I guess, as usual, it's the characters who we know the least about their motivations that are the most interesting to watch. And so let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Does Nala Se harbor feelings for Omega? Is she protective like a mother, or is she protective like a business person is over their newly created IP? There are some really interesting and complex relationships in this series that I didn't expect to see outside of, I don't know, Andor. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.